Welcome to My Zone Online School. My name is Mr. Letwai Dumi. Welcome, Clarice. Before we start with our lesson, let us remember to sanitize. Make sure all the parts of your hands are sanitized and keep the social distance by stretching out. Today's lesson is on square numbers and cube numbers. To start, let us go to page 15 on our booklet. That's where Mathematics Grade 7, Lesson 8 is square numbers and cube numbers. So I have to read through. The learning objective is to know the square and cube numbers and their properties. The competencies need to recognize and list square and cube numbers up to 10. When a number is multiplied by itself, we call that the product or the answer is a square number. For example, you can count the blocks with the first one there, which is a square, which is just 1, so that is the same as 1 times 1 to give you the product or the square number as 1. So 1 is a square number. The second, we have 4 blocks there, and then that is 2 squared, so it's 2 times 2 gives you 4. Goes with 3 squared, 3 times 3 gives you 9, 4 squared, 4 times 4 gives you 16, 5 squared, 5 times 5 gives you 25, 6 squared, which is 6 times 6 gives you 36. We have 7 squared, which is 7 times 7 gives you 49, 8 squared, which is 8 times 8 gives you 64, 9 times 9, 81, and 10 times 10, which is 100. Now we have to move to page 16. Page 16, there is a multiple table whereby there are numbers which are in red, colored in red, and blocks, and some which are yellow. So to read on top on the right side is a multiplication table whereby we have square numbers. Square numbers have 2 dimensions, namely length and breadth, which is also the width. In the multiplication table square, to the left, the square numbers, or we can say the perfect squares, are shown in red. Reading below, that is why there is a little 2 to the top right of the number. We use this when we work out the area. This will be covered later in the year, so it's another topic to do. Take note of the way the number are written. We have 3 squared, that gives you 9. So the base number there is 3. The exponent or the power is 2. And the square number is 9. Or we can also say 9 is a product. We are done with the square numbers, so we have to go to the cube numbers to read through the cube numbers. A cube number is a product of multiplying a number by itself and then by itself again. So that number has to appear 3 times. For example, there are blocks or cubes which are drawn there. The first one is 2 times 2 times 2. That can also be written as 2 cube or 2 to the power 3. There is 3 times 3 times 3. There is 4 times 4 times 4. 5 times 5 times 5. Moving to page 17. Reading through, cube numbers have 3 dimensions, namely the length, the breadth, which is the width, and the height. That is why there is a little 3 to the top right of the number, which that 3 is also called the cube. We use this when we work out volume. This can also be covered a little bit later. Note the way the number is written. There is an exponent, which is 3, which is also power. There is also the base, which is 5, and the product or the cube number, which is 125. If you look in the box on your top right side corner, the numbers are written with the exponent, which is 3. That means 1 cube is 1 times 1 times 1. That gives you 1. 1 is also a cube number. 2 cube gives you 2 times 2 times 2 gives you 8. 3 cube gives you 27. 4 gives you 64. 5 gives you 125. 6 cube gives you 216. 7 gives you 343. 8 gives you 512. 9 gives you 729. And 10 gives you, 10 cubes gives you 1,000. So with that, allow me to go to the chalkboard so that I can explain this in much detail. So we have learned about the square numbers, and the cube numbers. And some of the properties that we need to learn here is we can have, for example, is a 2 squared. Whenever a number is a square number, it's having this little power here, which is a 2. And this, you can also expand it in this way. You say 2 times 2 to give you a 4. A 4. So if you look at this 2, it means this number has to appear twice. These 2 have to appear twice. That's why there's a 2 here. I can give another example. For example, we have 4 squared. 4 need to appear 2 times. So it has to be 4 times 4. And that should give you a 16. So this 2 here, it shows you that you have 4 2 times, given that we have to multiply. So it's a number multiplied by itself. That number has to appear twice. That's why we have a power 2 here. I think that's much easy. So we say a 2 on top, it's an exponent, or we say the power. The number which is there, which is a 2 or a 4, it's called the base. And the answer you get, it is called the square number, or we can also say the product. A product is an answer to multiplication. So whatever answer you get after you multiplied a number or numbers, then you get a product. But when we have a power as 2, we say that is a square number. Cube numbers, We can give also an example of a cube number as maybe we can say 2 to the power 3 or 2 cube. In that way, we are multiplying this number by itself and again by itself. So we have a 2 times 2 times 2. Look at this little number. It's an exponent or the power. So that number has to indicate that your 2, which you are multiplying, must appear 3 times. So we have 1 here, we have 2, and we have 3 times. That's why there is to the power 3 or cube, because it's 3 times. And 2 times 2 is 4, 4 times 2 is 8. So 8 tends to be a cube number. We can also say 8 is a product because it came up by multiplying numbers. And we said an answer to multiplication, it is called a product. We can also use the number, for example, 10 to the power 3. If you look at that number, we have to multiply 10 2 times, and 10 must appear 3 times. We have 10 times 10 times 10. So remember, this is 3 times that a number has to appear. And then we say 10 times 10 gives you 100. 100 times 10 gives you 1,000. So we say 1,000 is a cube number coming from 10 cube. 10 times 10 times 10. This is an exponent, this is a base, and this is a cube number, or we can say the product. So with that, I believe this is much easier to do and clear. So we have to go back to our booklet so that we can do the activity, or I can read through the activity. Okay, the activity is on page 17 of our booklet. The first question under our activity is to identify all the square numbers in the list below. So there are numbers there: 1, 7, 11, 16, 18, 24, 25, 30, 36, 73, 79, 80, and 81. So you are required to identify or just write down all the square numbers on that list or from that list. The second question is to fill in the missing square numbers in the list below. So there's a list there, there is a space, and there's 4, there's space, there's 25, 3 spaces, and then there's 81 in the last space. You must write. We go to page 18 on our booklet with the third question, meaning to find the path of square numbers from the start to end. You may only move horizontally or vertically. You must go in order without missing out any number. Take note of the instruction which says you can only move horizontal or vertically, and the starting point is indicated with an arrow, and the ending point is also indicated with an arrow. You can do that. Number 4, we have to draw a line to match the numbers from the column on the left to those in the column on the right. So if you have the first one with 2 times 2 times 2, what will be the answer on the right hand side? The second one, if you have 63, what could be the answer? 3 times 3 times 3. We have 43, we have 5 times 5 times 5, and 13. So match the correct numbers which are corresponding. Number 5, there we have to circle all the cube numbers in the box below, or all the numbers which are listed there. Just circle the numbers which are cube numbers. So that gives, or that brings us to the end of our presentation or lesson of today. Before we leave, let us remember to sanitize and make sure all the parts of your hands are sanitized. Social distance by stretching out, and from us, it's a bye-bye.
Hi everyone, I'm back, and if you are scared of what you read on social media, talk to your parents and ask them the questions. They know everything. Until next time, bye!
I'm feeling so bad because of I have been arrested. We are trying to sell to provide our kids with food, but the police, they come to arrest us.
I was literally apprehended in Independence Avenue. I mean, there was no prior communications with the police or with Bonn or Benga Namibia. These guys literally just apprehended us on surprise.
And when you are talking in a manner that is exaggerated about brutality in this country, I should ask you in which country you live.
Yes, I can confirm that indeed there were 2 cell phones that were found after a search was conducted at the cells that the Fish-Road accused are staying.
Do you understand the amount of money that the government has spent on the fight against COVID-19? Could they have spent 300 million on tracing people and managing people? Is that even possible?
COVID-19 affects people very differently. Many people show no symptoms at all, but some are hospitalized for weeks. So what does the disease do to your body? The coronavirus enters through the mouth, nose or eyes. It then usually attaches itself to cells lining the nose, throat, airways or lungs. It can turn these cells into factories that multiply and spread the virus. For the majority, a fever, cough and breathlessness are as bad as it gets. But the virus can damage the small blood vessels lining the lungs and initiate clotting. The alveoli are tiny air sacs where oxygen goes into the blood. If they become inflamed, it can trigger pneumonia. Seriously ill patients need to be given oxygen as the lungs fill with fluid and debris.
I legit couldn't breathe. My oximeter was measuring under 88% oxygen levels, which is very dangerous. And the only time I ever thought my life was in danger was at that point.
COVID-19 doesn't just affect the lungs. It can also disrupt the immune system, which is used by the body to fight illnesses. Cytokines are part of the immune system that find and signal infections. For some people with severe COVID-19, this system can go into overdrive. If too many cytokines build up, it can cause an overreaction that damages healthy cells. This is called a cytokine storm for the most severe cases. COVID-19 can lead to seizures or even a coma. It can also cause brain problems that lead to strokes. The immune system overreacting can cause clots that stop the blood supply to parts of the brain. Brain inflammation, psychosis and dementia-like symptoms can also affect seriously ill patients. The average length of the illness is 14 days, but many people have symptoms for much longer. Breathing problems and post-viral fatigue last for months in some cases.
I cannot walk for long simply because I will feel a little bit short of breath and I feel the need to sit down. And that's something that has never happened to me before.
Some of the people who are most likely to develop severe symptoms are older adults and those with underlying health conditions. It's not fully known how anyone will react to COVID-19 until they get it. So it's important for everyone to follow health guidance. What precautions are you taking to stay safe?
India's Ranthambore Reserve in Rajasthan is home to the rare Bengal tigers. Every year, John Isaac, an Indian-born photographer, travels from New York City to document the lives of these majestic animals.
In the last 10 years, I think my interest has grown tenfold, and I'm very particular about the survival of the tigers.
His goal is to make sure that people everywhere know about the grave danger Bengal tigers face: extinction. John holds seminars and photographic exhibitions from his visits to Ranthambore to raise awareness of the plight of these tigers. He's currently working on a book to document their dilemma due to an increasing human population encroaching on their territory. According to John and wildlife experts, each tiger needs as much as 9 square kilometers to survive, just under 4 square miles. The relationship between tigers and people has always been difficult, but now, with much less territory to roam, tigers often wander into human settlements.
The conflict between the villagers and the tigers has always been there. And then government tries to compensate. If a tiger kills a goat or a cow, they pay a certain amount to the villagers.
In the past, tigers used migration corridors or routes followed by wildlife for travel between summer and winter habitats. Now these pathways have been taken over by people who use them as living quarters and to reap firewood.
We are trying to work with the communities living around and trying to reduce their forest dependency so that we can conserve this corridor patch for the smooth and easy movement of tigers.
Jamuna Devi, a farmer, lives near one of the migratory corridors. She used to depend on the forest for grazing pastures. Now, thanks to a World Wildlife Fund initiative, Jamuna no longer needs to rely on the forest for her family's survival. The secret? Introducing new alternative crops closer to her home.
गई साल बोया हमने खुद ने और ये तो अभी यही गई साल बोया है ये आया होया कांदा है हम 25 रोज को तो तारीख को तो बोया ही है और रोज में अंतर तो आगा भूलने लगा.
The success of this project has led to even more changes. Jamuna decided to plant fodder for her cattle on her excess land to further preserve the habitat of the tigers. She has also switched to cooking gas so that she doesn't have to collect forest wood for fuel.
जंगल में सब दुनिया ने जब छोड़ दिया तो सब बे होगी कोई काम नहीं करा लकड़ी को भी नहीं करा जंगल में जाने से भी परेशान है दुनिया गैस भेज दिया सबन के घर घर में वे सभी सिलेंडर पकड़ते हैं और रुपया को कोई समझते ही नहीं है अब भीतर भरा लावा.
Climate change also has a direct impact on the habitat of tigers.
The last 2 or 3 years, they say, there's been a drought. The rains have not been regular.
Climate change is a serious problem in this country, even it's in the continent. So keeping these forest areas alive and protected is the only solution. This year we have raised a nursery of 10,000 saplings. Forest department have shown their interest. They bought around 2,000, 3,000 saplings.
The idea is to plant new trees to replace those lost to severe weather conditions and human activity. Poaching used to be a major threat to Bengal tigers. But thankfully, the number of big cats killed by poachers has plummeted due to measures implemented by law enforcement agencies, resulting in less demand for tiger products. Especially the introduction of camera traps and digital apps, which automatically take photos of moving tigers and suspicious persons moving around in the forest.
Every time I hear something like that, I feel so good, in some ways, some things are working.